Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're coming to you from our home studios because we do want to make sure that you are safe and healthy, you and your families, your coworkers, and team. We're honored to be joined by our next guest who's in her home studio as well. She's at her house, Kaitlin Dastugue. She's the executive director for Rebuilding Together Nashville. How are you doing, Kaitlin?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing well. So we'll talk obviously about how the quarantine and COVID-19 is affecting your operations. We'll talk about that in a second. But for some context, let's start. Give us a little bit of history lesson. You all been doing this for over 20 years now. So give us a history lesson for Rebuilding Together Nashville.
Sure. So Rebuilding Together Nashville, we're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is repairing homes, revitalizing communities, and rebuilding lives. So we've been active for 25 years here in Nashville, and although our work has looked a little bit different, the core of our work has been helping homeowners make the critical repairs they need to live in safe and healthy environments and stay in their long-term homes and communities. So we did this work mostly volunteer run. So we started as a grassroots organization under the name Christmas in April in the mid-90s. So volunteers would work all year round. We had a working board who would identify their neighbors in need and fundraise, get the tools, and go out in April each year and make sure their neighbors could make the repairs they needed to live in safe and healthy housing. So we operated that way for many years. And then in 2010, Nashville had a huge flood. So we were called to respond to that flood and really become part of the disaster response efforts. So since then, we've operated year round. Our work has geographically really focused on Davidson County and Nashville. And in recent years, we started thinking about really focusing on one neighborhood at a time to really amplify our impact. So we will be working with the community of Bordeaux in Nashville for the next few years as our focus.
Start with, when you talk about the home repairs and renovations, let's talk about some of the ones you do typically. So it's everything from flooring to access and wheelchair ramps. Paint the picture of some of the typical projects.
Sure. So many of the homeowners we work with have lived in their homes for usually a few decades, are older homeowners. So many of the times we're looking at accessibility modifications. Our goal in all the work we do is to make sure we're looking at removing any safety and health hazard in the home for homeowners. So many times this looks like tripping hazards, so reducing falls, but it's also looking at things like indoor air quality. One of the most interesting studies I've read in the last few years talks about how children and seniors are the 2 points in your life where you spend the most time in your home. So really the environment there has the biggest impact on your health. Those are also the 2 points in your life where you're the most vulnerable health-wise. So really thinking about, what does your home look like? I know many of us who are sheltering in place are thinking a lot about that these days, but the indoor air, make sure it's breathable, especially if you have underlying health, respiratory issues. Leaky roofs can cause mold issues, which become, big issues that can develop over time. But make sure that any fire safety hazards are addressed, that homeowners have working smoke detectors. It's anything from those really small interventions to everything from, we have totally remodeled bathrooms to make them wheelchair accessible, and we do a lot of roof repair and replacements. Yeah. So on average, when we work with a homeowner, we spend, in terms of dollar amounts, about $10,000 to $15,000 per house. And that allows us to address usually 2 major systems and then a suite of smaller repairs. And the more partners we have involved, the more we can stretch those dollars. So we work with contractors, skilled trades professionals, volunteers, and other government and nonprofit partners.
At this point, you're over 500 homes that you've repaired, correct?
That's correct.
What does that mean when you look at, obviously starting out, like you said, Christmas in April, and all of a sudden now you start adding it up to over 500 homes? That's a big number in terms of impact. So when you look at success and grading that, what
Mhm.
what are some of those factors? I mean, obviously each home, you're counting each home, but for each of those homes, there's a family involved and, lives obviously with the seniors and those and the children that are living in those homes. So what are the things that you look at to say this is working?
That's a great question. There are so many different ways that we look at our work. So one of those being that any hazards that exist in the home before can be remediated through the course of our work. So we've got a 25-point safe and healthy housing checklist that it usually guides how we scope a project, and we work with the homeowner and their family to make sure as many wish list items can be built into that checklist, but it really helps focus our work so that we're really focusing on those repairs that have the biggest return in safety and health. So that's kind of the immediate measurement that we're using. But in the long term, one of our big goals is to make sure that no homeowner feels pressure to sell their house prematurely due to unaddressed home repair needs. We know in Nashville that really the last few years, we've been talking a lot in our community about affordable housing, and affordable home ownership is a big piece of that. So, even many of our homeowners are on fixed incomes. So that usually means that maybe that nest egg to save for that hot water heater you knew was coming up, or that new roof you knew would need to come in a few years, that money might need to be spent on really urgent things like medical cost, or other cost of living issues. So what we really hope to do is that no homeowner feels pressured to sell their house prematurely due to unaddressed home repair needs.
Yeah. And a lot of that then comes into neighborhood revitalization, neighborhood stability, community. So there's so many pieces that are the ripple effect of what you're creating. Go back to just like you mentioned, the selection process of how the families in the homes are chosen, and then the orchestration of the volunteers and the specialists and all the pieces that need to come together that really then kind of answer the question of how do we help you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the biggest things we know about our work, and that goes into how do we measure success. One of the realities that we face every day is that the needs are far greater than we as an agency can address, or our partner agencies that work in the home repair sector. We know this one through the fact that we rarely have to advertise for our services. We get about 20 calls a month for homeowners who are seeking home repair assistance. On average, we have the capacity to serve about 25 to 30 families a year. So there are many, many more families who have home repair needs that are going unaddressed in our community and in communities across the country. We're part of a national network of Rebuilding Together affiliates. So we know that these issues around homeownership preservation expand outside Nashville and even Tennessee. So homeowners apply directly to us. So we have an application process. We look at things like total income for the household. We serve families who are below a certain income threshold. We also make sure homeowners have property insurance, that they're up to date on property taxes, and that they do own the home that they reside in. So those are kind of our four main qualifications. And then we give priority to senior households, veterans, and people with disabilities, knowing that their ability to address home repairs is often more challenging and there's more
Right.
barriers there. And then once a homeowner has been approved, we go out for a home assessment. So we spend up to 2 hours, our staff does, talking with the homeowner, learning about their needs, talking with the family, and doing a very thorough home assessment to identify where all the areas are. And that's kind of when our big wish list is formed. And then we go back and we help develop that scope, taking consideration funding availability. And then that's when we start talking to our partners, whether it's skilled trade professionals that we hire. Sometimes it's construction companies who are coming to do a volunteer day with us, and some of our special funders who come in for particular projects. And we figure out what we can do, and we make those trade-offs and those decisions to develop a final work scope.
How has the coronavirus, COVID-19, quarantine, how has all that affected things on your end?
Quite a bit. So we know that many of our clients fall in that vulnerable category. So many are older adults. Many have underlying health conditions as well. So out of we're respect and we're trying to do everything in our power not to put them at any more risk because of the work that we would like to do, needs to be done at their house. So right now we're really focusing on current clients who have exterior home repair needs, and we're getting those done with our contractor partners who are licensed and insured and are following some strict social distancing guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had to postpone our volunteer projects for the spring, which is usually our busiest time of year. But our volunteer partners have been really amazing. So our corporate partners who usually come out and volunteer with us and also support us through a donation through that volunteer day. Many of whom are still saying, hey, we know y'all need the support, get this work done no matter what, and are really stepping up, which is great.
Yeah, that's a good story in and of itself.
Yeah.
When you talk about getting things back to norm, obviously financial assistance to be able to underwrite your efforts, the volunteerism like you're talking about, how are some different ways, especially moving forward, that we can all play a role and help?
Yeah. One of the things that we know as important the physical health of your home has on your physical health. We also know that isolation is one of the biggest causes of mental health, problems for older adults. So if you have neighbors, if you have family members who are a little bit more isolated, calling to check in on them, seeing what their needs are, seeing what their maybe home repair needs are, even those basic home maintenance needs may be. Something as simple as cleaning out your neighbor's gutters, something they wouldn't be able to do, especially this time of year in the spring, is so important because a clogged gutter system may cause some rainwater to develop at the foundation of your house, which can cause some really big problems down the road. So even stepping up in those small ways while still actively doing some social distancing measures for those who you know and trust would be great. We're also encouraging folks the month throughout the spring to rebuild alone together. It's a social media campaign that we started to help our volunteer teams keep their skills sharp. So we've been posting all month about different projects you can tackle at your own home to help make your own home safer and healthier, learning some new skills so that when all this is lifted, you can come out and volunteer with us and really help our community rebuild.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask next is, just the specialization, the skill level of a volunteer that's needed. I mean, obviously, to your point, you do have some contractors and those who this is their profession, but for just volunteers coming out, how much skill do they need to have? I mean, I think it's really cool that you're helping them. Like, let's train you up right now. Let's use this to fix your house, but also to prepare you for the future. But how much skill and technical knowledge do people need to have to sign up and just be a part of what you're doing?
Yeah. We often have volunteers who've never picked up a hammer before come on site with us. So we have trained volunteer leaders on every build site and every volunteer site that we have. So if you don't know how to do something, our staff or one of our house captains will show you how to do it. But there's a lot of really simple repairs you can do, a lot of landscaping work and drainage that really help homeowners continue to maintain their homes that we can easily put anyone to work. So don't let that deter you.
Nice. And then what, on your end, you get to see firsthand the impact that you're having. So in other words, going in and you assess the need, and then you've got your team and you come in and you help them. And so you get to see the huge smile on their face and the impact that it has, the personal side. Give us a little bit of taste of just what that's like on your end to know that you're stepping in and you might be serving for a day or two or more and, volunteering, but ultimately the difference that you're able to make and what that means to them. Walk us through kind of what that feels like.
Sure. Well, first, I think a lot of homeowners, as anything that seems too good to be true, there's a level of skepticism. What do you mean that I can receive this work on my house for free? That has a pretty big price tag. What do you mean a group of volunteers wants to come to my house to help me tackle these maintenance projects that I haven't been able to do? So it's really beautiful seeing kind of why me skepticism turn into new connections, new friendships, and kind of a new sense of community. I think there's just an amazing desire, especially I see it here in Nashville. I know this is in communities across the country, but a really like innate desire to help your neighbors and neighbors helping neighbors and feeling like we are in a really connected social network in our neighborhoods and our cities. And that really just, our projects are on the front line of that. And it's something really, really beautiful. I love hearing stories of someone who may meet a homeowner client on a build site, and then it's someone that they stop by and visit with, as they're walking their dog later, but helping kind of create those networks. We talk a lot in Nashville about old Nashville and new Nashville, and I see a lot of our work bridging the gap.
Nice. Last question is the easy one, is where do we go to raise our hand to be a part of what you're doing? So website, social media, phone number, where do you tell it? Where do you direct us to go?
Yes. Well, our website is pretty easy. It's www.rtnashville.org. You can find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, find us on Twitter. And then on our website, there's a whole volunteer page where you can sign up to get on our volunteer list. And learn all about the work we're doing in different areas of the city.
Well, Kaitlin, greatly appreciate all you and your team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.